So let me start with Louise Fox, who's the chief economist of USAID, and I think with us from California, if I'm not mistaken. Louise was engaged with the report in the early stages when everybody was still very confused how to address this broad topic, and she helped give some guidance of where to focus on. So let me start with you, Louise. The report suggests that, especially in Africa, agro-industries will need to be promoted to provide new employment to all of those that are expected to exit agriculture in the coming decades. The report even goes as far as that the integration of agriculture markets could lead as many of 1.7 million farmers to exit agriculture worldwide in the coming decades. So that's about 1/4 the world population. So if that's a true thing to expect, then how plausible, how realistic is it for agro-industries to develop so fast that they could become the new driver of employment creation and absorb all this excess labor supply? And the more so, is this realistic considering that it will have to include many of the hundreds of young workers that will enter African rural markets over the coming decades? Louise.
Thank you, Ron. I apologize that you're going to see me with a bit of a delay, but that's the best technology we could do. And thanks for including me from my home TV studio here in San Francisco. I just want to say that I agree with the central thrust of the report. And I think this issue of connectivity and infrastructure is really important. I mean, we've known that for a long time. We know that, for example, better roads can reduce wholesale margins and increase the farm gate prices. So we've known a lot about transportation infrastructure and how important it is to the rural sector for a long time. We've also known that the same investments that can increase productivity and deliver better incomes to farmers will also support the growth of the rural non-farm sector. Now, the specific question about agro-industries, however, is an interesting one. On the one hand, clearly, places like Africa, which are late industrializers, but have good potential, where there is good potential in agriculture, the countries that have that have a real opportunity because many countries have moved out of agriculture, are not going to be able to feed themselves, and African agriculture has a real opportunity, not only to feed Africa, but also exports to other countries and regions. And to the extent that this is processed, in Africa, this, of course, is an opportunity as well, not only for a number of reasons. However, I think it's unlikely that agro-industry is the whole solution. Agro-industry is only a small part of the solution. And, you know, many countries in Africa still have very high fertility. I think it's fair to say that in terms of employment transformation, meaning the transformation of the place of work away from the household and household production to the firm, few countries have really achieved that in the sense that the majority of jobs are outside of the household at the levels of fertility of many African countries. I mean, we can start with Niger at 7.6 children per woman, which is extremely high and a real outlier. But we can even talk about Uganda and Nigeria at about 5.6, 5.7. No countries have really had an employment transformation with that kind of fertility. I mean, Rwanda, Ethiopia are really on the way down, and on the way down at lower levels of of education, interestingly enough, than some of the other countries like Ghana and Kenya, which are also on the way down. But so the children, the workforce for the next 15 years has, of course, already been born, and the workforce for the next 25 years is at this point anyway being thought of. So I think it's fair to say that in sub-Saharan Africa, the high fertility will retard the employment transformation. Having said that, I think there are a lot of benefits to agro-industry. It may or may not be located in rural areas. It may, if it's for export or for even for regional markets, it may be located closer to a border or a port. But the investments in connectivity, of course, will get the agricultural goods to the plant quicker, and investments in other items such as cold storage, et cetera, et cetera. And in addition, agro-industry is an opportunity for some countries even to sell regionally. The dairy industry is still fairly underdeveloped in Africa, for example. Now, these opportunities will have multiplier effects in rural areas and in urban areas. So those who get the jobs within the agro-industry sector, including the transportation, for example, and trade facilitation jobs, these will have multiplier effects throughout the country. These will increase, again, the demand for food from rural areas. So it's definitely a development which could benefit sub-Saharan a lot. But in some, not alone. It won't do the trick. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise, for the succinct answer, and also actually raising the question whether agro-industry can achieve as much as maybe we would hope or would like it to be, but then also you gave some suggestions how that the answer to that question could be broadened up so that we can find solutions.